Finish the line. Be kind.
Rewind.
Good job. What is that?
From the VCR tapes.
Oh my gosh, Blockbuster!
City Market.
City Market, you're right.
Where you rent the VCR and the tape.
Yep. Okay, now there's a funny story. One time my mom and
Wait, I wanted to hear the funny story.
Yeah, we were enjoying that. Come on.
Some drama in the morning.
Raise your hand if you knew it was Be Kind to Rewind. We're dating ourselves.
Yes, we are.
Yeah, I think we'll give about another minute, make sure everybody's getting on. And we'll get started.
Hi, good morning. Hi.
Good morning. Yeah, we're giving just a minute for everybody to get on. So. Okay. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this STAC April 2nd meeting. I'd like to welcome everyone as we have people transporting around the moon. It's been a long time since we've had that sort of a mission going from Earth, and the transportation system is definitely going a long way today. So we'll start off with roll call. Central Front Range.
Leo Evans here.
Eastern, myself. Grand Valley.
Dana Brosser, Grand Valley NPR Director.
Greater Denver.
I think that's me, Dr. Cog, Emily Bear. I'm here.
Okay.
Yep, Jacob Rieger, Dr. Cog.
Okay. Gunnison Valley.
Hey there, this is Michelle Nauer representing Gunnison Valley.
Intermountain.
Brian Pettitsier.
Morning. Upper Front Range. Or North Front Range, sorry.
Kristen Stevens.
Northwest.
Ryan Serkvenik here.
Pikes Peak.
With Holly Williams, I'm pretty sure John Leosatos is on here, and I don't know if Danielle Miller is on, but Holly Williams, Pikes Peak.
Okay. Pueblo area.
Good morning, Eva Cosleon, FPO manager. I'm not sure if I see Councilor Ted Hernandez yet, but I'm sure he'll join us.
Okay. San Luis Valley.
Good morning, Vern Hersink, chair of the San Luis Valley TPR.
South Central.
Good morning, Brian Blasey here, and also Mitchell Wardell from Commissioner Huerfano County. Thank you.
Southeast.
Stephanie Gonzalez, Southeast, and I believe Ron Cook is on as well.
Yes, I am. Thank you.
Thank you. Southern Ute. Anybody on?
Good morning, Mandy Brown, Southern Ute Transportation.
Southwest.
Good morning, Shack Powers, South Best Transportation Planning Region, and Sarah Hill will be joining us after 9:30.
Upper Front Range.
Good morning, Tim Malone, Morgan County.
Ute Mountain. Anybody on? Okay, I think that covers our roll call. Don't believe we had any public comments. If there was anybody on, oh, okay. Aaron shaking no, so all right. We'll move on to approval of the March meeting minutes that were sent out. Would entertain a motion to approve.
I move to approve those meeting minutes.
Holly
Kristen
Williams,
moved.
second.
Holly second. Okay, it's been moved second. And any additions or corrections to the minutes? Seeing none, minutes will stand approved as presented. Transportation Commission report. They met March 18th and 19th. Again, they had another joint TC CTIO workshop on Mustang funding. Still working on trying to figure out how to fill the budget shortfall that they're going to be facing in the years to come. Still considering trying to use toll revenues to possibly help backfill that some. I did voice concerns from STAC that taking away funding from other streams that are supposed to go to construction and maintenance and preservation of the system is a concern. But there is still support for Mustang, so it's a tough spot to be in for that one. Had a presentation on the Pueblo Area Council of Governments greenhouse gas report. That was a good, interesting report on how they're meeting their greenhouse gas reductions. They had a condemnation for some property and then budget workshop for the 26-27 budget, which they then adopted in their regular meeting. And they had the 10-year plan workshop that we're going to be having later in our meeting, and the roadside fire mitigation update also. So those were good presentations, and we'll be seeing those later. Otherwise, also was kind of routine stuff for them. So any questions for me? It was a fairly light meeting other than the Mustang discussion, which is continuing. So. All right. We don't have Transit and Rail. She was unable to attend today, so we'll move on to our TPR reports. Central Front Range.
We've not had a meeting since the last STAC meeting. We do have one planned for April 13th, so we're about 2 weeks out from now, and not much happening other than that. Thank you.
Okay. Grand Valley, Dana.
Yeah, so we had a workshop last month with our board instead of a meeting, and at that workshop we gave an update on our transportation finance study. So we're deep in that and kind of understanding, I guess, public opinion on transportation finance and some of our gaps a little bit better. We're also deep in the planning for our Cycle Safety Fest, which is in April. And we also meet with our safety task force bi-monthly. So I gave a report on our gaps analysis that we've been working on to try to understand better the gaps in safety education in our community. That's it. Thank you.
Greater Denver.
Thank you. At our March 18th meeting, it was virtual since it overlapped with National League of Cities. We adopted the 26 to 29 Transportation Improvement Program policy amendments. We adopted a policy framework for the second round of local government grants as part of Dr. Cog's Power Ahead Colorado Climate Pollution Reduction Grant. We adopted we call it PACO, the PACO incentive policy as well, establishing the framework for administering $40 million in building electrification incentives. We discussed and took positions on state legislative issues, and received an informational briefing on Dr. Cog's Sheridan Corridor Safety Study, the final report. And we also received an informational briefing on Dr. Cog's Ride Alliance SMART Grant Stage 1 report out involving a successful test of the Trip Exchange Hub to coordinate human service transportation trip requests.
Thank you. Gunnison Valley.
Hi there. We have not had a meeting, but we do have one scheduled. I believe it's for the end of April, so we should have something to report at the next meeting. So thank you. That's it.
Thank you. Intermountain, Brian.
Yes, good morning. We have a meeting tomorrow, actually, tomorrow morning for the Intermountain Transportation Planning Region. And in that meeting, we will be electing a new chair. So this will be my last STAC meeting. And appreciate working with you all and encourage you to continue to do all the good work that you do for transportation in the state of Colorado. Thank you.
Thank you for your work over the years. Well, you'll be missed.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks, Gary.
North Front Range.
Hi. So we held our meeting in March on March 5th. We have one tonight too, but on March 5th, we approved the TIP amendment and the February TIP amendment and discussed the NFR MPO's inaugural TMO call for projects, as well as we kicked off the 2055 RTP, which we have named Connected Communities 2055. We recently made changes to update our logo to make it more accessible for online users and regionally specific. And the new logo and color palette will be rolled out over the next month, so stay tuned. And then our MPO staff submitted an application to the Highway Safety Office grant to call to hold a regional safety roundtable in 2027. And grant awards should be announced later this month, so fingers crossed on that. And then finally, our MPO staff in partnership with PPACG staff submitted an application to the Air Quality Enterprise to host an ozone forum from October 12th through 14th of this year. I want to thank CDOT for their letter of support for our application. And information on the forum and the save the date information is available on the North Front Range MPO website. So we invite you all to attend that this fall. Thank you.
Thank you. Northwest.
Hi, everybody. Our next Northwest TPR meeting is a week from today. We did have an MMOF selection committee meeting yesterday where the group recommended approval of a project in Oak Creek to help them plan for a rail station there. And also in Grand Lake, they applied. They are looking at adding bus service from the Granby rail stop to Grand Lake and into Rocky Mountain National Park. So two really good projects that I think will help a lot of people. That's all I've got. Thanks.
Pikes Peak.
Okay, yes. So a couple things. We did our TIP improvement program document is out for public comment. We're going to adopt, hopefully, our certified safety action plan next week on the board agenda. I was going to say also too, there's some closures on I-25 for the next couple days as they're working on the Fillmore and Garden of the Gods. They're working on the Garden of the Gods bridge. And so if you're driving at night, know that Colorado Springs will be a little bit tight. And then our Fillmore to Garden of the Gods project is going excellent. I'm sure that the Peterson, the access to the west side of Peterson is going well. It's been a while since I've been through there. There were a couple accidents when they changed the traffic patterns. And other than that, we are doing great. So that's it.
Pueblo area.
Good morning. We had our meeting last week. And as Chair Beatty said, we did present at TC on the 18th, our greenhouse gas report. And the next day it was approved. So we're happy to get that off our chest. It was a lot of work. And so that's exciting. We also heard from Shane Ferguson about our 10-year projects. And then also, fingers crossed, April 10th is when they will be opening the new Medal of Honor Boulevard, which will connect Pueblo West to Pueblo. That's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you. San Luis Valley.
Yeah, good morning again, everybody. Vern Hersink, San Luis Valley TPR. We haven't had a meeting since our last STAC meeting, so not much to report. Thank you.
South Central.
Good morning. We haven't had a meeting since our last STAC meeting. Our next meeting is scheduled for April 23rd in Trinidad. The only project update that we have is that they're going to start the resurfacing project on April 6th on US 160 west of Wilsonburg, from Wilsonburg to Colorado Highway 12. That's my report. Thank you.
Southeast.
Yes, good morning. In our area, projects are taking shape, getting started, or have been concluded. So that includes resurfacing pavement markings, continued planning efforts in the design phase for the SHIFT project, which is passing lanes. We recently had a request for support for programming previously unallocated RPP funding to help complete an emergency crossing repair in Baca County, which that was approved by the TPR to help complete that project, and it was to the tune of $240,000. SCCED, for the benefit of the Southeast Regional Transit Program, prepared and submitted a congressionally directed spending application for the update and repair of our newly acquired transit hub building, as well as a bus replacement ask. And whether we're chosen for the award or not, we're really thankful to the CDOT team, Jamie and Herman, for the letter of acknowledgement that was written on our behalf. Thank you. We appreciate the support. And our next meeting is scheduled for April 22nd at 10 a.m. That's all I have. Thank you.
You. Southern U.
Good morning. Sorry for the delay. Trying to find my unmute button. Mandy Brown, Southern Ute. We don't have any updates at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Southwest.
Good morning. We did not meet in March. Our last meeting was in February. At the February meeting, we did change our meeting cadence to quarterly, so we will not meet again until May. However, in the interim, many of our member governments did send letters to the Joint Budget Committee opposing some of the MMOF and other spending cuts that they were making to transportation.
Thank you. Upper Front Range.
Good morning, Tim Malone, Upper Front Range. Our last meeting was on March 5th, and I apologize, but nothing earth-shattering to report.
Okay. Thank you. Ute Mountain Utes. Anybody join? Not seeing anybody. For Eastern TPR, we met on March 8th or March 9th. 8th, I think it was actually. And we've got updates on some of the projects coming up. We have I-70 project out by Siebert to do some reconstruction there on failing concrete. Looking forward to the 94 resurfacing project that got some of the redistribution funding. US 6 up between Sterling and Atwood, work on that reconstruction up there on that badly failing stretch of highway. There's also some bridge projects on US 6 and 385 in Holyoke that are starting construction. And then we had some petitions presented to us from people in Kit Carson and Cheyenne counties along 385, where they're having large amounts of wind farm construction, solar, battery storage, and also some rail construction projects that are really tearing up portions of 385 out there. And they're trying to figure out how to get some help out there to keep that state highway together with all the additional heavy freight with development of the wind and all the renewable energies. That's one of the issues for a lot of eastern Colorado is these projects are coming in and having major effects on state highways and county roads that we need to make sure at least the state highways trying to be maintained to get these heavy, large loads in. So I believe they also sent a letter to the commission last month asking for help to preserve that highway corridor. Otherwise, that's Eastern's report. Okay. We have anybody on from Federal Highways? Any update? Seeing anybody? Do we have anybody with Federal Transit? Any updates? Not seeing anybody on those, so. Any other reports? Anything missed from anybody?
Mr. Chair.
Oh,
I
there we are.
mistakenly forgot that Ann is in attendance today. So Ann does have a transit and rail report.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Yeah, I'm coming to you from my Southwest Regional Transit Association conference in Albuquerque, New Mexico. So I'm more remote than normal today, but I just wanted to share a few things with you. We did have a track meeting recently, and it was a lot of good information about what the funding of the Clean Transit Enterprise is doing. The DTR has also developed a first mile, last mile tool that can be really helpful for mobility around regional stops that I think other agencies in the state are going to be able to take advantage of, which is very exciting. I also wanted to mention an upcoming event that CASTA's co-sponsoring in Ignacio on May 9. We're having a Truckers Against Trafficking Youth on Transportation Safety Month. Truckers Against Trafficking has some training that's actually was put into law that bus drivers need to be trained on recognizing human trafficking on their vehicles. And so this is an organization that put together some really good training that I think transit agencies around the state use to train their drivers. But they also like to train other folks who may run into human trafficking, and in this case also help kids and families be aware of what human trafficking looks like. So this event is on May 9. It's in Ignacio. If your area is interested in a human trafficking awareness event, we are lucky enough to have one of the Truckers Against Trafficking leaders live here in Colorado, and I'd be happy to connect them with you. I was part of a community event near in Glenwood Springs a couple years ago, and that was really valuable. They brought together transportation entities as well as the police and other emergency services, just so that everybody could get on the same page and understand, and who do you call if this happens, and let's put some plans in place. So they're pretty cool events, and I'm happy to connect you to Louis Greek. I don't know if anybody's met him, but he is our person here in Colorado. Anyway, you're also all invited to Ignacio on May 9. It should be a pretty neat event. And then I also wanted to mention, being at the conference, I just heard some folks from the FTA speak yesterday. And one of the things they mentioned is that the a number of competitive grants are going to be coming out this spring at a faster rate than normal and overlapping when they don't always overlap. And in addition, the time frame of the grant responses is going to be shortened. And so his advice to all of us was like, start thinking about your projects and choose them now, and then be ready to kind of make choices about where you have the time to spend your time to put in the competitive to fill out all the requests. So anyway, that's the word from the FTA I got yesterday at my conference. Any questions?
Questions for her? Not seeing any. So thank you for
Right.
joining us.
Yeah, thank you.
Good update. Thank you. All right. And we don't have anybody from the Federal Highway or Federal Transit, so we'll move on to legislative report with Emily, if she's on.
Yes, I am. Good morning,
Okay,
all.
there. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Chair Beatty. Yes, we are about 44 days, 45 days away from the end of session. So it's coming up quick. We have supported a few bills this week. We testified in support of criminal offenses related to critical infrastructure metals. That's HB 261101. That is a bill that is important to us because we do have significant costs and workload expenses related to the theft of infrastructure metals out of our traffic lights, fiber installations, a whole host of different infrastructure pieces. And so that's one that we testified in support of yesterday, and it moved out of the Senate is moved out of the first Senate committee, is headed to the Senate floor. We also testified in support of wildlife collision prevention, which allows drivers to pay an optional $5 fee to fund wildlife collision infrastructure, or wildlife collision prevention infrastructure. So wildlife crossings or fencing, that would be remitted to the Bridge and Tunnel Enterprise, as well as to the Colorado, as well as CPW. And so that has gone through 2 committee hearings and is now awaiting appropriations in the Senate. Reporting after fatal car crash is another bill we're supporting, HB 261127, which we have testified in support of. That one has passed both chambers and is now just waiting for adoption of the Senate amendments in the House. Yesterday, I also testified in support of transportation safety modifications. That's also known as the accident to crash bill. So it updates all statutory references from accident to crash. So that makes it about 65 pages long. It has a few other modifications as well that CDOT is very supportive of. So that moved through Senate Transportation and Energy and is on the consent calendar in the Senate. And that should be the last step of that bill. And then we're still awaiting a Senate hearing on transportation statutory cleanup, which is another bill that CDOT is supporting. The transit access bill is still moving through the process. It was amended significantly in the House, but I had a good discussion with TRAC members last week to hear that there's still some significant concerns there. So we are continuing to track that. We are engaging on automated driving system commercial vehicles. That's HB 261286. We have a concept to amend that bill that would create a proactive regulatory structure for automated commercial motor vehicles, and also would remove the provision in the bill that would require it to go to a vote of the people. So we are still continuing to discuss that with the sponsors, but we've shared a alternate proposal. Let's see, there's a few other things I wanted to chat about. I know a few people had mentioned our busing discussions. We're still collecting feedback from stakeholders. There's still a possibility that we could have a bill this year that would add a little bit of flexibility related to the use of toll revenue, while keeping the vast majority of toll revenue on the original corridor where it was collected. But that's something that we've gotten a lot of stakeholder feedback on, so we're grateful for all those discussions so far. And then, yes, multimodal options fund has already been mentioned as well. think we're all tracking that the JBC chose to eliminate that $10.5 million general fund transfer. The governor's office did have a comeback asking to reduce that amount. So reduce it from 10.5 to 7.5 to still give 7.5 million to the general fund to the multimodal options fund. That was not something that the JBC took up or chose to hold a new vote on, so it was not included in the long bill. The full elimination of the transfer is what will be introduced. So there's still time to engage on that if you'd like, but it is, of course, such a tricky budget year, so it has been difficult to get movement on any front on that piece currently. So happy to answer any questions on that, but or any other bills as well. Thank you, guys. Oh, and you're muted, Gary.
Thank you, Emily. Any questions for her on any of the legislation? Or any comments? Okay. Not seeing any. Up next is Jamie with federal updates.
Morning, everybody. So I would say the big transportation news this week is that people
Jamie,
are going back to the moon.
Jamie,
Yes.
I believe Director Bear had a question on Emily's item before we start on your stuff. I apologize.
I'm so sorry. I think my hand may be obscured by my background. I don't know.
Now it popped up something.
I just had a quick question about the MMOF cut. Was the final recommendation from the JBC that they would eliminate the 10.5 million for just this year? Is it considering to be permanent?
Yes, the final recommendation was to eliminate the transfer permanently. There was some discussion about whether it would be a 1-year change or a permanent change. Ultimately, they decided to make it a permanent change. And then there's also been some discussion around changing the allocation of the retail delivery fee as well. And that is not something that has come from the department. I want to make that clear. That was something that the JBC members discussed on their own. So those are the two components that are part of the bill.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Back to Jamie.
Evening, everybody. So no big updates right now going on in Congress. They are currently in recess. They are working on ending the DHS standoff right now and getting that shutdown ended. So the Senate has passed a bill to fund DHS and get TSA paid, and the House had originally rejected it, but then they said they were going to support it last night, but then this morning they opened for 2 minutes for a procedural maneuver and then closed the House again. So they are in recess right now and will not they will call into session on Monday and may do something to advance the Senate bill, but as of right now DHS is still shut down. So that's kind of, I know that's TSA and air transportation, but that's kind of what's going on in Congress right now while they're in session for the Easter and Passover holidays. We did get everybody's congressionally directed spending request in on Friday. So thank you so much for everybody who helped with that. That was a big lift this year. We'll see what the Senate and the House members decide to do. The House is moving much more quickly on that. We're anticipating seeing a markup on their appropriations bill sometime in mid-April. Hopefully we'll have a bill to look at soon because it may give us some sort of idea of what they're thinking for surface transportation reauthorization. We still have not seen a draft or heard much about surface transportation reauthorization. As you recall, IIJA is the Surface Transportation Reauthorization Bill. It needs to be redone every 5 years, reauthorized. It will come to an end this year on September 30th. And so we're hoping to get a new one. We're not entirely sure what it's going to look like. We're seeing some possibilities through the Basics Act. We're hearing from other organizations, but we just don't have a great idea right now of what it's going to look like. Some of the other big congressional news is Sam Graves, who has been the chair of the Housing and Transportation, who has I have T-HUD on the brain, who has been the transportation committee chairperson in the House for quite a while, is stepping down and not running for re-election. So that's actually a pretty big deal in Congress in terms of leadership and transportation. So, and then in other transportation news, so I started doing this as a joke a really long time ago, and really it has just brought so much joy to my life. Everybody, it is National Ride Your Horse to a Bar Day. I don't know if you can participate in that, but that is definitely, it is also National Love Your Produce Area Manager Day. Don't know what that is, but you know what? If you can say thank you while you're at the grocery store today, go for it. So anyway, ride your horse to a bar day. Let me know if anyone has any questions. Yeah,
Kristen.
Or Commissioner.
Thank you, Jamie. Thanks for the updates. With the transportation reauthorization, it expires in September? Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Will there be continuing resolutions then likely for like at least some of the funding that's not?
Yes.
Yeah.
So that's what they've done in the past. We
Okay.
haven't, I mean, I'd have to go back and look. I don't even remember. Like maybe we got one in 2010 on time. They're typically continuing resolutions. I also think and I don't know. I think you have better odds betting on who's going to win the Super Bowl next year. I do think there will be continuing resolutions. What those look like, who knows? I think we also are in a challenge. I think this is going to be a brutal midterm election. And I think we all know there's a lot on the national conversation around Congress and this election. And I think it'll be interesting to see when they decide to go into recess. Because pretty traditionally in election years, they go into recess in October so that people can go home and campaign. So will they rush to get it done so that people can go home? Will they exit early so that people have more time to campaign? I really wish I had an idea, but historically we have seen continuing resolutions. That said, I think Sam Graves also really wants to get something done before he leaves, and I don't know, and he's been working pretty diligently behind the scenes, we've heard. So we'll see what that looks like. But Congress is a tad chaotic right now, and so I just don't know how organized they are. As an outsider's perspective, it really just looks like they are just having trouble getting work, like paychecks done. So we'll see what happens. But yes, historically we've had continuing resolutions. That said,
Okay.
whole new world.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, not seeing any. We're rather far ahead, so if it's all right with everybody, I think we'll just go ahead and continue on with the 10-year plan update. Same. Oh, you're up, Darius. Somehow I muted myself, so.
Not a problem, Mr. Chair. So we presented this presentation to kind of show how the 10-year plan helps with achieving the statewide goals, and we wanted to present that to you today and kind of show some of the projections on how what we feel what some of the efforts that the department is undertaking is going to help achieve those goals in the future. So just to let you know where the plan for right now is, we believe that the commission is going to take action on the 10-year plan in May. At that time, before that, excuse me, we will, of course, bring the plan before the STAC for a recommendation on approval for the commission. I do want to note that there is going to be a quick recommendation on the Elmores East project, only because of the federal grant, the info grant that project received, so that way it can continue forward, because it's a design build project and it does need to have all of its funds in allocated as part of its a design build aspect of that project. So that will be up for a quick workshop and decision item for the commission this month, but that will be the only project, and the entire plan will be up for adoption, or at least planned for adoption in May. But if we want to go to the next slide, please. Let's go to the next slide. So that's just the workshop agenda. Next slide. So that's just our overview slide. So in terms of what the commission adopted back in September of 2024, they adopted 3 main goals for the statewide planning process. And this is not just for the 10-year plan. This is for the overall, for all of our programs, which includes fix our roads, advancing transportation safety, and sustainably increasing transportation choice. And we have about 7 performance indicators to see how the department is doing in terms of meeting those overall goals, which we'll get into in the following slide. So let's go to the next slide, please. In terms of advancing transportation safety, we'll measure progress in that through reducing the number of traffic-related fatalities and serious injuries, and reducing the number of traffic-related fatalities and serious injuries involving vulnerable road users, with the goal of a 50% reduction over the next 10 years. Next slide, please. In terms of fixing our roads, we have metrics relating to getting interstate pavement at or below 1% poor over the next 10 years, and the overall state highway system with the internal measurement of drivability life at or above 80% high or moderate over the next 10 years. And for bridge condition, ensuring that the national highway system, all of those bridges, maintaining at 5% poor in the next 10 years, and for the state highway system at or below 5% poor over the next 10 years. Next slide, please. For sustainably increasing transportation choice, looking at overall state revenue service miles, increasing that by 67 million, but over the next 10 years, reducing vehicle miles traveled, and reducing greenhouse gas emissions in the transportation sector by 60% from the 2005 baseline. John, go ahead.
Yeah, Darius, sometimes we can make statements on things and it's not really helpful. And I try not to be that guy. But I do want to point out that when we had this conversation about the service miles, I think it was back when Ron Papsdorf was still here, and Ron was like, hey, so is this just CDOT or is this all systems? And it was, in fact, everybody, and we were all supposed to partner. At the same time, we're partnering with CDOT to sort of do these things. The state legislature is moving money, taking money away from our ability to do some of these things and prioritizing. And again, I wish that this was more, giving you a solution, but I don't have one, and I understand that there isn't one. But by prioritizing Bustang and giving money to Bustang, we're taking money away from other transit things that can be far more effective. Because, and again, don't want to get down the urban-rural area, argument, but in the urbanized area, we get a lot of bang for our buck with our transit dollars. Bustang, bang for the buck wise, might not be as good as an investment. So all I wanted to do here is, again, not poke anybody in the eye. I just want to make sure that as this goes back to the Transportation Commission and they start saying, how come, our urban areas aren't helping us out more, if you guys could just please point out to them that the legislature has been doing things that take away money from our ability to be as effective as we can be. I try to thread the political needle there. And again, my intent was not to be nasty at all. So I just thought it had to be mentioned at this point. So my apologies for interrupting you.
Not a problem, John. And some of the slides as we get into it, hopefully kind of help illustrate how we are helping with that, because I think we also want to mention the Clean Transit Enterprise, which is providing money to all local transit entities throughout the state in order to help achieve this goal. Do note that the unfortunate situation that we're having with the Multimodal Options Fund on there, but hopefully that can help, because I think we're doing good things with that enterprise and helping provide additional funding for both capital and operations on there. So if we can continue on to the next slide with that quick overview. I will note that with the 10-year plan, we're taking a look at, it's only one piece of the entire puzzle, where we want to help continue the collaboration. We've worked with developing the regional plans. We've talked about how we can develop the TPR plans. We've been having all these conversations since back in May, looking at the MPOs that are developing your plans and putting together the 10-year plan, but it's only a part of the overall picture. There's of course the asset management pieces, there's the enterprises, there's all of these things that go into this. And so we want to continue that collaboration as we continue forth on here and see what we can do to help move the needle on some of these items. So moving on to the next slide. So next slide, please. In terms of helping with fix our roads, we have noted that we're increasing the base asset management program by 6.2% from the FY29 levels, by 6.2% and 2.3% respectively. While I'll note that the baseline CDOT bridge funding level has stayed the same, you'll see on the next slide that the bridge enterprise is increasing the amount of money that's going into maintaining our bridges through new powers. They are able to provide even more funds to maintaining our bridges before they go into poor and we have to do expensive replacements. So if we could go to the next slide, please. Oh, we're not talking about bridges yet. I apologize. So when we take a look at how the 10-year plan is helping with pavement, 53% of our 10-year plan projects include projects that are that have asset management elements, that include pavement or bridge asset management elements. And you can see some of the numbers here in the particular regions. And what that's going to do is help address some of the pavement and bridge backlog, because they're primarily focusing on the poor assets, while our asset management program is designed to help make sure that they don't get don't get into that poor state to begin with. But this is kind of help us get caught up. Next slide, please. So when we take a look at those investments on the decisions that we had worked out, oftentimes in conjunction with a lot of you on this call, we were able to estimate that it's like adding another 7 years to the surface treatment program, in addition to what we had in the next 10 years, in addition to what we had already put in there. So we believe that we're already augmenting the already planned, what we already planned over the next 10 years. So it's like getting 17 years in that 10-year span through what has been planned with the next 10-year plan. So being able to help move the needle with our roadway condition. Now I think we're going to get into the bridge portion of it. Next slide, please. Yeah, so 29% of the next 10-year plan includes bridge work, which includes about $637 million, with some of the statistics over the next 4 years, about 370 million, and then about another 250 million in the out years. So it'll contribute about BT is going to take off about 300,000 square feet of port deck area. So helping to improve bridges. So we're able to move freight. We're able to have be able to avoid expensive, even further expensive treatment, expensive maintenance on bridges throughout the state, and help achieve the goals that we talked about earlier. Next slide, please. And then this is, if you remember back in November and January, we've used some of these maps when we had talked about specific projects, but this is from the pavement standpoint. We just put these maps together. These dots kind of outline where a lot of these projects are. So we do have the rural resurfacing program. That's the dark blue dots. The light blue dots are projects that have pavement elements, so in interstate projects or projects that are in urban areas or have some sort of resurfacing element within it. Next slide, please. Same thing with bridges. Projects that are primarily focused on replacing bridges are the dark blue dots, and projects that have bridge elements are the light blue dots. Next slide, please. Now, in terms of achieving transportation safety, it's a little bit harder to correlate that projects back into achieving the actual goals. So we're looking at reducing crashes, which then, if you're able to reduce the incidence of crashes, that's how you're able to achieve the goals. So that's what the focus is on the projects. Next slide, please. CDOT produces the State Highway Safety Plan, so which is one of the key elements of the last planning cycle. So if you remember, we had one of our outreach efforts, which was we had five events specifically related to safety, and we published the State Highway Safety Plan, which included specifically on the safe system approach, which included these 5 key elements: safety culture, safe roads, safe people, safe driving, post-crash care. And when we look at designing projects in terms of safety, if we want to go to the next slide, please. Looking at proven safety countermeasures, which are also mentioned from our federal partners. And I'm not going to go into these in detail, but these are the types of things we look at when designing projects, whether they're specifically related to safety or not, in terms of making the roads safer. So these are specifically related to bicycle and pedestrian safety. If we want to go to the next slide, this is related to roadway departure. Next slide, please. Related to intersections. And then next slide. When we take a look at safety, we have projects designed specifically on improving shoulders and passing lanes. So this is a very similar slide that we used with STAC and the Transportation Commission in the past. So we have 49 projects primarily related to those types of safety improvements. And then these types of projects with prediction after our traffic engineering unit takes a look at these. It's prediction that when these projects are put in place, that that crash incidents related to the corridors near these projects, 20 to 40% predicted crash reduction near the corridors near where these projects when completed. If we go to the next slide, it's related to wildlife crashes, excuse me. So we have 11 specific wildlife crash projects. And then again, 20 to 40% predicted 20 to 40% crash reduction on the corridors with these projects. And then finally, we have the intersection crashes, and we have 86 of them throughout the state. And again, 20 to 40% crash reduction on the corridors with these projects. And then finally, in terms of sustainably increasing transportation choice, if we want to go to the next slide, of course, we're investing 60 million in busting from the plan on capital. We have about 15 million to support stops and mobility hubs for Bustang services, and we have 50 projects that will support local transit service in the plan and local partners, with some examples in here, such as the Federal Boulevard BRT. We have some local mobility hubs and some local transit services as well. Next slide, please. We have 74 projects that will include local active transportation elements with examples throughout the state. And when we take a look at some of the predicted outcomes, which of course the future isn't certain, but we do have a lot of expansive models. We have the GHG rule in place, and we're able to take a look at some of the predictions on what would come up with this. But we have seen that overall VMT per capita has declined in the past 2 years and has declined significantly in the past 20 years. So we've seen a 10% decrease in that, while populations increased 28%. And when we take a look in our model, we believe that it's going to continue to decline another 7% in the next 10 years, which is a 19% decline from 2005 levels, while population is still projected to increase another 11% over the next 10 years. Next slide, please. In terms of GHG, from the transportation sector, I will note that there's one piece of GHG that Colorado has no control over, which is aviation. So I do put that as a caveat, but it's projected that through all the efforts from the GHG pollution reduction roadmap and all the efforts that have come out from the near-term actions, it's projected that there's going to be a 33% reduction from the transportation sector from 2005 levels. And that's just from the near-term actions that have happened over the past 8 years from what we had seen back in 2005. And then finally, next slide, please. We have the major rail, transit and rail projects that are providing more travel options throughout the state. Mountain Rail, Front Range Passenger Rail, joint rail projects. And as I had mentioned earlier, we had the clean transportation, says transportation, I apologize, that is a typo, is the Clean Transit Enterprise. They're providing formula funding grants to local transit agencies throughout the state, $350 million in additional funding from fiscal years 26 to 29. And the estimates that's come from these transit agencies that are going to provide 29.9 million additional vehicle revenue service miles and around 46 million unlinked passenger trips statewide through 2030. So if we go to the next slide, please. These are just finalization and schedule. So what we kind of talked about that a little bit. Happy to answer any questions with this, with the schedule, with adoption. Of course, we'll talk about a recommendation next month. Next slide, please. Of course, this slide we've seen many times report about the reporting, which will include dashboards, quarterly tenure plan reports, all the stuff that we have done previously, and then major project updates. Next slide, please. And then we'll be talking about that. So I just wanted to share this presentation that we had with the commission to kind of show some of those pieces on there. Happy to answer any questions with this, but kind of give an overview on how all these pieces tie together and how this is working to help support the goals that the Transportation Commission set at the very beginning of this process. So yeah, happy to answer any questions, and thank you for your time today.
Okay, any questions or other input for the 10-year plan that should be coming up for adoption next month? Did you want to touch on commission as Region 5 has a project is partly why they've delayed this, I guess. you have an update
Yes,
on?
I mentioned that earlier. Is the Elmore's Corner East project. That particular project got an info grant. That was a project that the department worked very hard in order to make sure that we had that project. It must work on getting that project out to add on April 20th, I believe. So they need to get pre-approval from the commission to get that out and going. So they need to have that pre-approval done. So that is one of the conversations that needs to happen.
Just wanted to point that out. That was partly why it delayed a month. So
yes.
And if STAC has any questions, Julie Constant, Region 5 RTD, I'm happy to answer them right now.
Any questions for her? Okay. Not seeing any, so thank you for joining. Okay. There's nothing else on 10-year plan. We'll be making a recommendation next month when we see the final list again, the commission. So guess we'll move on to the electric vehicle program update with Michael King.
Thank you, Chair Beatty. Somebody bring up my slides, or can I do that myself? Ah, there they are. Thank you. Good morning, STAC. It's good to be back with you. I was recently checking. I think the last time that we talked about this topic was back in February of 2022. And so I feel like I have lived multiple lifetimes since then, as I'm sure you all have. And I'm happy to be back and chat a little bit about the work that's being done in Colorado for electrification and energy projects. Next slide, please. So just quick outline of what we're going to talk about. We'll start with some zero emission vehicle or ZEV goals. Talk about the market currently, what's been happening, different shifts back and forth, and then focus on some of the charging grant programs that we have here in the state of Colorado, including the NEVI program, which is the one that has gotten a lot of attention over the past year and a half, and then end with a little bit of information on our transit electrification. Darius mentioned the Clean Transit Enterprise in his presentation, and we'll talk a little bit about the zero emission vehicle portion of the CTE work. And then, of course, plenty of time for discussion and Q&A at the end. Next slide, please. So many different goals on this page. You don't need to read all of them necessarily, but we have climate GHG reduction goals that you see in the upper left there, different percentage reductions for the entire state by certain target years. This includes transportation, but is not limited to the transportation sector. And so this is what is underlying a lot of our electrification work, is making sure that the transportation sector, which is the #1 contributor to GHG in Colorado, is reducing its impact, while the other sectors, energy production, agriculture, housing, all the other things that have emissions associated with them, they are also moving towards those reductions. So we are an integral piece of that equation, but we are not by any means doing this alone. In terms of the EV plan targets, so these are the specific goals that we have when it comes to EV adoption in the state. You can see the top line there, 940,000 light-duty EVs by 2030. That's been a goal that we've had for quite a while now. And then that, of course, it moves us towards the 100% trajectory by 2050. There's also specific goals for medium and heavy duty vehicles, for transit vehicles, for e-bikes, and then we have targets for the number of chargers that are out there in the public, because we know that charging and vehicle adoption go hand in hand. We also have clean transportation WIGs at CDOT, and so those are our specific annual targets that we're trying to meet in terms of coverage of EV charging around the state, as well as our scenic and historic byways that are considered EV friendly. Next slide, please. So yes, moving into the vehicle market. So the big picture over the past many years, this chart starts in December of 2010, I believe. So cumulative EV sales across the country are continuing to grow and have been for more than a decade. And what we're seeing is an increase in the pace of that adoption. So one example of that is that the first million EV sales in the country, it took 8 years to get there. The next million EVs, it was 3 years. Following that, it was 9 months to get to the fourth million. So this overall trend is encouraging, but of course the quarter to quarter or month to month trends are a lot more up and down. And if we go to the next slide, we can see, well, actually, before we get to that one, so Colorado has always been a top EV adopting state. Historically, we've usually been in the top 10 or top 5. In Q3 of 2025, we actually surpassed California in terms of the percentage of new vehicles adopted that were either battery electric vehicles or plug-in hybrid vehicles. So we were at 30.4% of all new vehicles in that sales quarter were BEV or PHEV in Colorado. And that put us ahead of even California, which is, of course, the national leader. This does not account for the raw numbers because Colorado is a smaller state. So California, Texas, Florida, they tend to be the ones that are the largest numerically. But the fact that we achieved this sales percentage in Q3 of 2025 was pretty remarkable, and I think a testament to many years of work by many people in the state to get there. Next slide, please. So this is a much more bumpy picture of the quarter to quarter sales trends. Again, starting in 2010, this is just for the state of Colorado. And the dark blue bars are the battery electric vehicles, the pure EVs. And then the lighter bar that you can kind of see on top is the plug-in hybrid electric vehicles. So we count those together for our overall total. You can see a notable spike in Q4 of 2024 that is associated with the reduction of the state's EV tax credit. So a lot of people went out and made their purchases or leases at a time before that tax credit was reduced. Then we see a dip and then another spike in Q3 of 2025 because that's when the federal tax credit expired. And so you tend to see this spikiness associated with tax credits either coming on or going off, or those other bigger policy shifts that can drive to some extent consumer behavior. Obviously, right now, the last bar there is Q1 of 2026. We are in a dip, but past trends, we expect that this is going to recover moving forward, and that we're going to see that trajectory returning. And overall, we have 207,000 registered zero emission vehicles in the state. The bulk of those are the battery electrics, the 154,000, but there is still a robust market for those plug-in hybrid electric vehicles. And I would also note that about 20,000 of that total are medium and heavy duty vehicles. So these are not just passenger cars and trucks. A lot of these increasingly are delivery vehicles, transit vehicles, school buses, and even some larger Class 8 vehicles starting to come into the state. Next slide, please. If you look at numerically, where are these vehicles located? It does tend to track largely with population. So you see the dark blue in Denver County, up and down the Front Range. You can also see some darker shading on the I-70 corridor to the west and down in La Plata County. So this is numerically where most of the vehicles are. Makes sense given the purchasing trends, the distances people drive, etc. But one of the ways that we hope to grow the adoption across the state is by making charging accessible to people all over the place, so that wherever they live or wherever they want to travel, they feel confident that they can charge their vehicle, and that will, we believe, lead to higher adoption. Next slide, please. So moving into that, charging availability, next slide. The state has several grant programs that are focused on this. One important thing that I always try to note in presentations is that the state of Colorado, by and large, does not own and operate public charging. Rather, we have grant programs that help private companies or local governments, or in some cases, electric utilities, build, own, and operate the charging. So our role is to help offset those initial upfront costs, but then the state is not operating these businesses. The exception, of course, is that for our own state fleet, we have chargers at CDOT facilities. Those are sometimes available to the general public, but generally speaking, public charging in the state of Colorado is owned and operated by private businesses, not the state. So Charge Ahead Colorado, this is a program that has been around for more than a decade, funded several thousand charging projects around the state. Many of these are focused on level 2. So these would be, workplace charging, public charging, residential, not individual homeowners, but rather multifamily housing or things like that. And this is a program where 3 times a year we have a call for projects. And so, if you're ever thinking of a project, there is always another round about to start. The incentive levels have been stable for many years. So we have this kind of regular offering that people understand what they're getting. It's a familiar program, and it's accessible in the sense that there's always another one coming, and you kind of know how to be prepared for that. Fleet Zero is a newer program. It's similar to Charge Ahead Colorado, but it is explicitly focused on fleet operators. These can be private fleets, these can be municipal governments, or others. And so this is level 2 and sometimes DC fast charging that, as we say, is behind the fence. It's not accessible to the general public, but it allows a fleet, whether that's something like DHL or Amazon, whether that's a municipal government or a utility fleet, to transition their vehicles to electric. They get access to the charging grants. They are then required to operate those chargers for a certain number of years. And then the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment, through their Clean Fleet enterprise, has funding support to actually purchase the vehicles. So I mentioned before, we're increasingly seeing delivery fleets go in this direction. We've had larger, food service companies like Cisco and US Foods that are moving in this direction, purchasing battery electric vehicles, as well as municipal governments, state government agencies, and the like. Next slide, please. In terms of the general public, the passenger vehicle public charging, fast charging is kind of the model that many people are most interested in because it is closest to that gas station experience. When you're away from home, you need to fill up and get on your way. We've been investing in this since 2019 through our DCFC Corridors program. At the time, we started with 33 key locations across the state network, trying to build that skeleton of fast charging that would, make people feel comfortable and able to travel around the state or to neighboring states. And so this was an early investment that the state of Colorado made. The construction of the last site was completed in August of 2024. And then after we had already begun work on this, we started we saw the creation of the NEVI program, which is in some ways very similar and has built upon this foundation of fast charging for the public around Colorado. So we'll go to that next, and we can talk a little bit about NEVI. So this was a program created in 2021, part of the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, or the IIJA, as it's called. This is the first national investment in public DC fast charging by the federal government. So there were $7.5 billion allocated to the program. $5 billion of that was through formula funding to each of the states, plus DC and Puerto Rico. And so Colorado's initial allocation was $56.5 million over the course of 5 years. Every other state received a portion of that funding. And what NEVI did was it set a national standard for the power level of chargers, the number of chargers, the plug type, the amenities, all of the other requirements that you would expect to see in a federal program. And then the states were responsible for building out that network to meet those standards. There was also a competitive portion of funding, which was not formula based. And basically each state had to develop a plan, get it approved by the Joint Office of Energy and Transportation, and then update it on an annual basis as they implemented the program. Next slide, please. So Colorado was one of the first states to move into the implementation phase, in part because we had a lot of experience doing these types of programs previously. We have completed 4 rounds of NEVI program awards. We have an existing grant program called the DCFC Plazas program. This is a program that we take the federal NEVI funds, we also have state community access enterprise funds, and then we award both types of funding through a single application because the projects themselves are pretty similar. The color of money behind the scenes is not as relevant, so we ask people to apply and then we assign, what type of grant are they receiving for the program. Through that program, we've had 12 NEVI-funded locations already opened. Those all opened in 2025. The first was in Frisco. We've had other projects in Siebert, Monument, and other places around the state. We have 26 more sites that are actively being developed. So they've been awarded, they've been contracted. In some cases, they're already under construction or they're in development. And then we have 7 more that have been awarded but not yet contracted. So we're working through the process, building this pipeline of projects, and they're coming online. Already a dozen of them have come online. And then at the same time, I mentioned, for those non-fast charging projects or those projects that don't qualify for NEVI funding, we have the other grant programs that keep that level 2 charging, fleet charging, anything that is not going to fit into the NEVI or the plazas bucket. We have other funding approaches to address that need. Next slide, please. So if you've heard about NEVI in the last year and a half, it's probably because there's been a lot of legal wrangling and back and forth about this program. In February of 2025, the FHWA tried to pause obligation of all existing NEVI program funds. So essentially saying to the states, if you have not obligated all of your funds, you cannot do that right now. We're not going to let you obligate additional funding. So that effectively would have paused the program for many states indefinitely, or at least limited how much funding was actually available to them. State of Colorado joined with a number of other states to challenge this in court. There was a subsequent ruling that required FHWA to continue the obligation of funds by those plaintiff states, but importantly, not by all the states. So just the ones that participated in the lawsuit were allowed to continue, but most states in the country were still in an indefinite pause at that point. In August of 2025, there was new program guidance that was released by FHWA. So that said, we're changing some of the rules around how you implement this program, by and large, streamlining them, eliminating requirements that they felt were overly burdensome. And then the states were required to submit new plans based on the new guidance, and then that would allow them to continue the program. So Colorado submitted its NEVI plan update in September of last year. It was approved shortly after. And at the time, every other state and DC and Puerto Rico also submitted plans. So at that point, effectively, the entire NEVI program was restarted or continued, I should say, under the new guidance. Excuse me. So then most recently, a few months ago, basically 2 months ago, FHWA proposed a new rule for Buy America requirements on EV chargers. And this new rule proposed that it would raise the current requirement for domestic content, the percentage of the content of these pieces of equipment that is produced in the United States. The current requirement is 55%. And they were proposing to raise it to 100%. And this would effectively prevent any federal dollars from being used on EV charging because there is no 100% American-made equipment available on the market. And it is questionable whether it's even possible to source 100% American-made EV charging equipment because some of the components have not ever really been produced in the United States. And so currently, there has not been a final ruling on this proposed rule change, but many states, including Colorado, submitted comments arguing against this proposed change for the reason I just identified. So we're not, that process is not complete yet, but it illustrates, I think, this slide, the kind of ups and downs that we've been trying to manage, while of course still implementing a grant program and managing a portfolio of projects. We're also dealing with these sort of background legal disputes between the federal government, the states, and everybody else involved in this sector. Next slide, please. So why does all of this matter? We believe and research shows that access to EV charging is one of the primary drivers of EV adoption. And so back in 2020, when we started tracking this, we devised an approach of looking at the percentage of the state highway that was within 30 miles driving distance of a DC fast charger. This is a proxy for understanding how close, how much access do different parts of the state have to fast charging, which then is a proxy for the idea that people feel comfortable driving there because they know that they can charge when they need to. So in 2020, this was the level. We had about 40% coverage, and you can see it's primarily the I-25 corridor and the I-70 corridor. And if you look to the next slide, this brings us to March of 2026. Obviously, our coverage has increased quite a bit from 40% to 82%. Still have some notable gaps, particularly on the Eastern Plains. But this investment in fast charging through our state funding and more recently through NEVI really makes a difference in terms of where is charging available and how accessible is EV ownership for people, whether they live in rural areas or whether they live in urban areas but want to travel around the state and have access to all the great things that we have around Colorado. Next slide, please. So with that in mind, we are continuing to implement the NEVI program. We have updated our guidance to be in line with the new federal guidance. We are continuing to proceed with the programs in spite of the challenges that we faced. The request for applications for round 9 is going to be released later this month. We usually do 2 rounds of funding per year in the Plazas program. So if you have a project in mind and you're not ready to go in April, you'll have another opportunity in the fall. And we'll continue doing this as long as we have NEVI funding and state funding remaining to award. One of the notable updates to our program over the years is that we've started identifying priority locations, areas that are remaining gaps on the network as our top priority for funding. So those locations will have an enhanced score, in terms of comparing them to other potential sites that we could fund. They will score higher because they are important for completing the state network. And they will also have an additional incentive so that, that hopefully motivates the private sector applicants that this project will get a higher level of state support if it is funded. Again, you can see on the Eastern Plains, some of our top priorities: Southeast Colorado, Northwest Colorado, the San Luis Valley. These are areas that we have not seen as much demand yet, but we hope that by focusing the attention of the private sector and the applicants on these areas, that it will ensure that we get good proposals that we can fund, and they will then move into the pipeline of construction and activation. Next slide, please. So switching gears a little bit, this is a related program. The NEVI funds, the other charging grants all support this program, but we in Colorado, this is a unique offering that we have, is that we are specifically focused on scenic and historic byway electrification. We have 26 byways in the state. Obviously, they are areas of tourist interest and natural beauty. And so the idea is that if we can make sure that these areas are accessible by electric vehicles, that accomplishes multiple goals. One of them, it allows all of those EV owners on the Front Range to travel around the state, spend their time and spend their money in more rural communities that host these byways. It also makes it possible for visitors from out of state or out of the country to arrive at Denver International Airport. And if they are choosing to rent a vehicle, they could feasibly rent an electric vehicle and know that they can get to all of these destinations around the state without having to worry about it. And then also it helps us to put EV charging infrastructure into rural communities where local adoption may be low at the moment, but the presence of charging that initially serves visitors can eventually serve local people if they would like to do that. So it's a really interesting program. And the thing about it that sets it apart from other charging grants is that we have a very active partnership with the Colorado Tourism Office to promote these byways. So when they achieve the designation based on the amount of charging and the location of charging, the tourism office goes out there and promotes that to internal and external visitors. And the result of this is that we've gotten both state and national coverage of this program, talking about how it's so great to visit Colorado or visit particular parts of Colorado in an EV, and how easy that is, and why you should potentially, consider that for your next trip. And so this gives a clear kind of connection between, we're building infrastructure both for locals and for visitors, but we're also driving economic development of these areas by letting people know that it's a great place to vacation or to visit even for a day trip. So you can see that 20 of our 26 byways have been designated so far. We have 6 to go, and we're actively working on developing projects in those areas. And then even once every location is designated, there's still a lot more to do in terms of developing EV road trips or signage, or helping promote an individual. If a hotel installs charging, how do they get that word out to their potential customers? If a Main Street community wants to put charging on Main Street to drive visitation to Main Street, how do they tell that story? So there's a lot of interesting work that can be done here, even after the infrastructure, the chargers are in the ground. Next slide, please. So lastly, I want to touch on the topic of transit, because I know that's a big interest of many people, and certainly a focus of our electrification work. Darius mentioned the Clean Transit Enterprise that was established through SB 21260. Originally, the business purpose of that was focused exclusively on zero-emission vehicles. The funding was available for planning grants, facility upgrades, vehicle replacements, and then the charging and fueling infrastructure to serve those vehicles. Since 2024, the CTE also has an expanded business purpose that is more focused on operational support, rail projects, some of the things that Darius highlighted. And that funding comes from a separate funding stream. So the ZEV work is through the retail delivery fee. The operational work, the new projects, are through the oil and gas production fee. But all of these things go hand in hand. And the CTE is governed by a board of directors, and it's led by CTE Director Craig Seacrest, who many of you may know. Next slide, please. So we have a really great dashboard for the CTE, if you'd ever like to take a look at it. It tracks all of our awards. It breaks them down by funding year, by project type, by status of the project. And so we've awarded $45 million over the first 2 years of the program. We've done 2 rounds of planning, 2 rounds of capital grants, and you can see the breakdown there. In both years so far, the demand for these funds has outpaced the available dollars. So on the one hand, that's a positive sign that the transit agencies are seeking this money and would like more of it. On the other hand, it does, obviously, like everything else, it presents challenges in selecting which projects we can fund and which projects we can't fund. But we're hopeful that this bodes well for future demand in transit electrification. Next slide, please. And like with the overall EV sector, there are both challenges and opportunities here. The transit ZEV market has some challenges related to the fact that there are only 2 US-based full-size transit bus manufacturers at this point. So the supply of available vehicles for agencies to purchase is pretty limited, and that drives up costs and wait times. The battery capacity and the vehicle capabilities of some of the smaller transit vehicles, like vans and cutaways, don't often meet the needs of transit agencies, particularly in rural Colorado. They just don't have the range or the capacity to do the things that our agencies need right now. And of course, the upfront costs are higher, even though the overall operational costs generally are forecast to be lower. And then most recently, FTA reprioritized their federal funding through the 5339C grant program to be focused not on battery electric vehicles, but on other alternative fuels. So that has taken a major funding source off the table for this type of work. Here in Colorado, we have the CTE funds, so we can continue on a limited extent. But in other states, the federal dollars may have been the only resource available, and so effectively, there is no support for battery electric vehicles in transit fleets in other parts of the country right now. Despite all these headwinds, there are positive signs. So last year, there were more than 1,000 new transit zero emission vehicles on the road in the United States. There are also new transit ZEV manufacturers preparing to enter the US market, several from Europe, as well as others that we're aware of that are in the next few years planning to start selling in the US and meeting US standards. So that would hopefully ease the crunch on the limited OEMs available. And then operational data, as more of these vehicles are operating around Colorado and around the country, we're starting to learn more about how they perform. And one of the things that we've seen notably is that operations in cold weather are oftentimes better than expected. I've recently read some case studies from Madison, Wisconsin, and from Missoula, Montana, of successful transitions and how they're weathering those cold temperatures. We've had a couple of conversations with peers in Canada about their bus fleets. So the technology does seem to be holding up pretty well to the harsh conditions that here in Colorado it would be exposed to, and we're also seeing agencies in other parts of the country implement electric bus rapid transit and other systems. So it seems that the performance is there in spite of some of these kind of market challenges that I highlighted above. Next slide, please. So that is my overview. I'm happy to answer any questions or hear feedback from the group. And thank you again for having me this morning.
Okay. Any questions or comments for Michael?
I do have a question. This is Holly. I'm sorry I can't get my hand up fast enough. So my question is actually going all the way back to the slide about e-bikes, which is page 3, where you're looking for 10,000 e-bikes. So we had we were trying to get an e-bike policy in El Paso County for our trails. We had a pretty animated discussion because some of these e-bikes go 40 miles an hour. And one of our fellow commissioners, her kid actually got run over by one of them and was injured. And so we pretty much banned e-bikes from our El Paso County trails. Are you finding that that's what people are buying them for, to ride them on the trails?
That's a great question. I don't have data on the type of use that most e-bike riders are interested in. I think from a state climate perspective, the ideal is that people that get e-bikes are using that to replace vehicle trips. So less of the recreational trails and more of the, city streets, commuting, etc. That also presents safety risks, as you mentioned. I think that some of my colleagues here at CDOT are actually developing and implementing an e-bike safety campaign that is targeted at high schoolers and middle schoolers to kind of get ahead of that. These are more powerful than what you're used to. Here's how you safely ride. Here's how you follow the rules of the road. But it's true that, with that greater capacity to replace vehicle trips, you also can increase risk. And without the proper infrastructure to separate e-bike users from other users, you risk exposing people to harm. So we are aware of that and working on that.
Yeah, and our trails are just dirt, so it's not like we're marking them in any way or fashion. So, I think it might be a little different on a city trail where you can mark it saying, joggers here and that kind of stuff. We're not paving them or anything. So it was just an interesting discussion. So it'll be fun to see how that all evolves over a while. Thank you.
Carrie or Eric, did you have a response to that?
That's a really great question, Holly. Thanks for that. And one of the things that we're working on right now is really some good public education around e-bikes, because if the vehicle you're talking about is going 40 miles an hour, it is not an e-bike, it is an e-moto. And so e-bikes are in 3 classes. They have pedals. The class 1 and 2 e-bikes top out at about 20 miles per hour. The class 3 is at 28. They require special, a bike helmet isn't good enough. You need to be wearing a more substantial helmet on an e-bike. But if it's going 40 miles an hour, it's an e-moto. And that requires a driver's license. It requires being 16 years old. So we're working on getting some more information out there. because we love e-bikes, even e-motos are great, right? But there needs to be an appropriate safety context around them, so that people are, buying the right vehicle for their capability level. It would not be appropriate to buy a e-moto for a 12-year-old, right? They need a license to ride it, and they always need the proper safety equipment. So I'm glad you guys are taking a look at that.
Thank you.
You.
Just to follow, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. Go ahead, Eric.
Yeah, just to follow Commissioner Williams, as some folks may be aware, CDOT was leading a statewide travel survey in cooperation with all the MPOs in the state, including Pikes Peak. And that survey was, as they say, fielded, meaning that's when we were out gathering data throughout 2024. The survey did ask for a number of questions relating to e-bikes, including ownership of them, and then a bunch of data about use of them as well. So PPACG has their data, and we're all kind of in the early stages of making use of these data at this point. But those data are available, and that's brand new data. That never had e-bike use data before, but it is available out there to start to look at and see what it may say in answer to your question.
Thanks.
Thank you. Emily.
Yeah, thank you. Holly, that was very timely. The town of Erie, we just adopted our e-bike policy because we've had some issues, and sadly over Valentine's weekend we had a very serious crash involving kiddos and some e-bikes, and since then we've had a couple more. So I was going to say the same thing about classifications, and there is state law that helped inform our policy as far as who's able to drive or utilize e-motorcycles and what the difference is. And I think that a challenge that we identified in our community is that it was not widely known that particularly you needed to be 16 and have a driver's license and insurance to be able to ride these. So we are undertaking an education campaign in our community to try to address those safety issues. And I know that across the Front Range, a lot of communities are having the same conversations, even as we're trying to create trail connectivity and look at e-bikes as a usable resource for commuting. Erie's about 11 miles away from Boulder, and so we're working to build out that infrastructure so that people can actually get to work on trails using e-bikes. But yeah, it's a challenge, and I'm excited to hear and see what comes out of CDOT. Thank you for that update. My actual question about the presentation was slide 18, looking at the scenic and historic byways. How do we apply or sort of fill in the rest of that map? What's the process for, I don't know, trying to get an area included in that?
Yeah, great question. So all of our charging grant programs are driven by the applicants. So for us to fund grants for chargers on a given byway, we need either local businesses, local governments, site hosts, essentially, that want to apply for and then install charging. And then at a certain point, the Byway Commission can review the existing infrastructure and determine, does this merit designation? Is there, so for instance, without getting into the weeds of what goes into that, for every 100 miles of byway, we want to see DC fast charging every 50 miles. And then we want to make sure that there's charging within 15 miles of the front or the end of the byway, and then a reasonable level of slower level 2 charging at destinations like restaurants, hotels, etc. So basically, we need local folks to pursue the charging equipment. And then at a certain point, when they feel that they've met the standard, the designation occurs. And that's when the Colorado Tourism Office can go out and say, such and such byway is now EV friendly. Here's where you can charge. Here's what you can see while you're on your trip, etc. That's sort of how the process works.
Yeah, okay, that makes a lot of sense. So once it meets like a scale, and say, okay, this is a scenic byway that's that meets the requirements.
Yes, and each byway typically has, a local group of chambers of commerce and others that are kind of driving the activities on that byway. And so that's usually the conduit through which CDOT, through our scenic byway program managed by Lenore Bates, we make them aware that this opportunity exists. It diffuses down to the local businesses or the local governments that participate. And then once there's some infrastructure in the ground, it kind of comes back up to the board to determine, yes, they've met the designation.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments on the EV charging programs? Okay, not seeing any. Thank you, Michael. A lot of good information in there. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, we're going to move on to the roadside fire mitigation presentation that was given to commission and an update with Sean Smith.
Yeah, thanks, Chair Beatty. While Aaron's getting the presentation queued up, just a couple things that has transpired since the presentation to the TC. We did emergency procurement declaration, and it has subsequently been approved. And now we are working for the next TC budget amendment, the packet that'll go in. We are requesting $10 million from the maintenance reserve to be designated for either CDOT work or contractor work for roadside vegetation management and fire mitigation.
Rain over there.
Yeah, Sean Smith, I'm the director for the Division of Maintenance and Operations. And we're going to go through this. I have Jim Fox, who's Deputy Director of Maintenance. He's going to take over a portion of this as well. This picture here is really telling. This was a fire that occurred about a month and a half ago up in Thornton. And it was a a field fire about a mile off of the right-of-way. But this was the impact on I-25. It shut it down for about an hour and a half. So it's a real thing. So we're trying to be really proactive at what we do. Next slide, please. All right, so we're going to go into some meteorology stuff. Yeah, Holly, go ahead.
Well, of course, I have to tell my story. The fire down in Fremont County and off of Highway 115 by Fort Carson was actually caused by a truck that pulled off the side of the road because he was having engine problems, and it sparked and caught the weeds on fire. So this is really important, not only for CDOT, but also for all the counties anywhere in the state this year.
Yeah, absolutely. CSP is doing a lot of proactive messaging about checking your vehicles to make sure that your brakes aren't worn down too much so they don't throw sparks off. Don't pull off on the shoulder where there's dry vegetation. So there's some proactive messaging going on for sure. So going into some meteorology stuff, our meteorologists live like living in a 72-hour block. So to get them to predict some things out for months on end is kind of tough. So, there's always that running joke that a meteorologist has the most secure job in America because they can be wrong 100% of the time and they will still get a paycheck. But our staff of meteorologists are spot on historically. They predicted that this would be a dry winter before the winter season began, and that played out because the La Nina was just sitting there and not moving. So this slide here, this represents the snowpack that we currently have. Anything in blue is not good. That means we're below snowpack. The yellow shows that we're kind of where we need to be for the snowpack, but all in all, statewide, we are very below average on the snowpack. Next slide. This is the SNOTEL. This basically tells us what our water table is going to be. You can see historical data on the charts. The solid green line is kind of our average over a year. And this year, you can see where we're at is the black line that is way below average. green is the medium. Snowpack is historically ends in late April. However, anybody that's driven the road, even with I think who was it? One of the ski resorts got 20 inches of snow over the past 24 hours. It's not enough. Snowpack has already started to melt. If you've been driving on the system, you'll see. So we hit peak snowpack in mid-March. So our water table is going to be very low this year. Next. This is drought conditions. This was as of Thursday, March 5th. We do have an updated slide, and it is it's even more troublesome that we recently pulled. So these are our drought predictions. You can see that we're currently 57% of the states in a drought. The I-70 corridor is the main focus on that one. Next slide. Something of note is red flag conditions when we have low humidity and high winds. Excel was doing some public safety power shutoffs over the past couple months. We are not even, halfway through or more than halfway through the fiscal year, and you can see that we have already had 50 red flag warnings that have happened. Next. This is the drought outlook, March through May. We are anticipating that it's going to say persistent. You can see the brown areas is where there's persistent drought, and yellow areas are where there's a drought developing. There are some good news, though, as we get going through here. Next slide. Seasonal temps. This is what projected for March, April, and May. You can see that we're projected to be above average for April, May. Most notably is going to be West and Southwest Colorado. Next slide, please. Seasonal precipitation, it's going to be below average, is what forecasted. However, there is some good news on the other side of this, is because the La Nina is starting to shift into more of a neutral pattern, which is going to push moisture into our area. Probably, we had a little bit yesterday here in Denver Metro. It should anticipate, the meteorologists are anticipating for April and May showers. It's still not going to be enough to get us to recover, though. Next. Seasonal wildfire outlook. This is March, April, and May. This is nationwide. You can see that wildfire outlook there. Next slide. This is where it gets a little bit more interesting. As you can see, in June, it's going to shift to western Colorado, which is historically where we have our greatest wildfire opportunities at during the summer months. Next slide. Talked about it. La Nina is starting to move. On this chart, on the bottom, you can see it has JFM. That's January, February, March. Then it rolls into February, March, April, May, and so on across. You can see that it's looking like we're going to see an increase here for some precipitation, but we just, that's the rubbing the crystal ball. We just don't know. Next. And then, I'll turn it over to Jim here shortly, but just talking about vegetation management, currently what we do. So our teams right now, basically, we've already been very active in vegetation management. We're not spending in snow and ice removal, so we're saving there, and we're spending dollar for dollar vegetation management and other things within our activities on our highways. So the vegetation management that CDOT currently does is mowing. We remove ladder fuels. We try to promote vegetation for spacing, so a healthier forest. We do clear zones. So if you're going through an intersection or something like that, and you have a vegetation or tree blocking stop signs, signals, things of that nature, we go ahead and take care of that. And then also we try to make it aesthetically appeasing. So the picture on the right is a before and after of when our teams went in and cleared an area out for vegetation mitigation. Next slide. So the mitigation techniques, we have mowing. We don't have what you see here. This is something we're looking at. It goes on the front of a skid steer. We have mowing. We do trimming, dead vegetation removal, controlled burning. We do not do that within CDOT. That's Forestry Service type stuff. We bare ground. We have some chemicals that we utilize by our trained weed crews, that they go out and they do chemical bare grounding. And then also what happens when you do the bare ground, it gives a fire line fuel break at our right-of-way areas. Next. And this is, I believe, Jim, that you're taking over on this one.
Yeah, thanks, Sean. Yeah, so this slide here, we talk about for housing in the in areas of typical wildfire areas. They talk about a defensible zone, and we're just kind of showing on the left-hand side kind of what that looks like for a house. And on the right-hand side, we kind of use it's a similar tactic for when we're doing our highways. So we're trying to create some defensible space to some degree. So on the right there, we'll show a typical cross-section of our highway. We have, for our vegetation management, we'll break it out into different zones. And we're focusing upon this zone 1, which is 0 to 15 feet from the edge of pavement. And that's where we're, a lot of our zone or a lot of our vegetation management activities take place, including mowing. So just wanted to highlight, the concept is kind of the same when you're talking about our highways compared with maybe a structure. So next slide, please. So what we're doing for this upcoming season is we are going to take our project that we're going to have to reduce some of the fuel loading with respect to trees. We are going through a prioritization conversation right now. So we're taking data from the Division of Fire Prevention and Control, and we're aligning that with our highways, and we're going to make a priority as far as what that probability is for burn this year. And that's the effort that we're actually working on right now and hope to have wrapped up very soon. So generally speaking, for our efforts this year with regards to tree removal, we're going to be focusing on an area very broadly from El Paso, Teller counties up to Larimer County, and then the west up to Garfield County, up to Garfield County, and then down in Southwest Colorado, we're going to be focusing on Montezuma, La Plata, Archuleta, Dolores, and some of San Miguel. So again, we're leveraging our other state divisions to kind of help us identify those priorities as far as where we're going to focus our efforts first, and then we'll take action from there. So next slide, please. And I wanted to on that previous slide, we're looking at for our highways, a couple of different objectives we're trying to accomplish. The first being just trying to remove fuel loading from the side of the highways, which helps with the fire control, and also protecting evacuation routes as well. So 2 objectives that we're hoping to accomplish. So once Sean had mentioned that we just received approval to do an emergency procurement to bring on contractor or contractors to do some of our tree mitigation. And in general specifications, what we're going to do, once we identify the highways and the priority as far as mile marker to mile marker, what that scope of work will be is that we're going to remove dead trees. We're going to remove trees that are 50% dead or more. And our objective is we're going to go ahead and just chip on site, spread the chips around. Some trees could be a little bit larger, so those will be removed, but we're really going to take care of the dead trees and the more than 50% dead. For any disease trees, we'll kind of look at a case-by-case basis on how we're going to manage those. But again, the objective is to remove potential fuel loading, and a diseased tree has that capability. We're going to cut our stumps down pretty flush, about 4 inches, which kind of coincides with our mower deck heights. And then we're also going to go ahead and take care of what we call ladder fuels. So those are the branches, and we're going to focus on the 0 from ground level up to 4 feet from the ground. And that, again, that helps if there is a fire in the grasses, then it will help to kind of minimize the ability for the flames to reach up to, those higher levels. So that's our proposed scope of work for this tree mitigation project. Next slide, please. And I thought I would talk a little bit about kind of what we do, our maintenance practices that are standard every year. Obviously, they have, this year that there's a heightened focus on this, but as a part of our normal procedures, we'll mow the edges of roadways. And again, showing that typically we focus on that 0 to 15 feet from the edge of pavement. And we do that for a number of reasons. Fire mitigation is one of them, but also for traffic safety, for drainage improvement to get the water off the pavement, and also for snow drift reduction. So we will typically do that twice a year in each of the areas. Once, once the April, May rainstorms have subsided and the growth of the grass have gone up, and we'll mow there, and then we'll do another mow typically in the fall. That's our standard practice. And also want to note too that we will not mow on red flag days. So next slide, please. And thought I would share typically in the past 2 years what we've accomplished with those mowings, and this is just with the internal maintenance staff here at CDOT. So you can see for fiscal year 25 and 26 year to date, this was back in March for the TC meeting, so we've got a few weeks since then, but you can see about 27 or 28,000 swath miles we did in 25 and 26 year to date, and the swath is just really typically that width of the mower deck. So let's just say 15 feet. So that's how we measured the swath miles. And then down below kind of show what we've expended with internal forces on mowing in both fiscal year 25 and 26 year to date. You'll see a difference of 1.3 million or so in expenditures, although we've mowed about the same. We experience fluctuations in costs for a number of reasons. Sometimes there's traffic control is different, so we just have some variables that I can't always account for. But we do have a difference in cost. But I think the key is that 28,000 swath miles in 25 and 26 year to date. Next slide, please. And then want to talk more about our tree removal and our internal maintenance practices. So again, we can remove trees for same reasons as for mowing, visibility considerations, fire mitigation, a tree's blocking a traffic sign or a traffic sight pattern. And we typically will focus on that in that zone 1 again, that 0 to 15 feet from the edge of pavement. Next slide, please. And again, showing the accomplishments for those tree activities for 25 and 26 year to date. So you can see the numbers of trees. Again, we've done more in fiscal year 26 to date, and we've spent about the same. Again, there's variables in there that will have traffic control or other things that we can't always account for can't always account for in the final numbers as to why, but I think the highlight is the number of trees. Now, trees can mean a number of different things too. So you could have, if you've got a dense area of 2-inch diameter trees, you can certainly take care of more of those, and that could account for some of the cost differences. Or if you have a 12-inch or a 24-inch tree, that's counted as one tree, so you would take more time and more resources to do that. So all those things could play into why we spent the same amount of money, but we've got about 1,400 more trees done this year. Next slide, please. So to perform the work for this season, we're going to use a dual method approach. We're going to continue to focus on our internal maintenance forces and their standard activities, such as mowing and other one-off tree removals. But really, the big focus is going to be on the contracted services for the removal of trees that I spoke about earlier, and that's removing the dead trees and more than half dead. So that's kind of our approach for this year. And really, the heightened portion of this is the contracted services that we're going to utilize to take care of the tree removal. Next slide, please. Again, so I want to focus on that contract. As Sean mentioned, we received that emergency procurement, and we are working quickly to identify the contractors that we're going to use for this effort. So 2 parts of that: we're going to lock down what highways and what mile markers we're going to prioritize first, and then concurrently, we're also talking with a few potential contractors to get a sense of what their capabilities are. This is a pretty heavy timber operation, so we're looking for contractors that are used to dealing with a variety of sizes of trees, from very small to even 24-inch diameter. So we're in those conversations now. We're wrapping those up this week, and we'll move next into kind of selecting that contractor as far as who we're going to have the work be completed by. And we're looking for this month to get that rolling. So next slide, please. Okay. Happy to take any questions or comments.
Any questions, comments from anybody? Kristen.
Yeah, thanks for this presentation. I'm really happy to hear that you guys are doing all this work. I think there's so much work to be done in this space. We're trying to do work with local fire, folks in our natural resources areas. Are you working with any of the local, like volunteer fire departments or anyone to identify spaces, or you're you're pretty familiar with what's happening, just so, everybody's on the same page of what's getting done.
Yeah, thanks for the question. We are at some point we'll do some public information and some reaching out to those agencies that you mentioned. As far as our scope of work, we are leveraging both the State Forest Service and also the Division of Fire Prevention and Control, where they have that data available to us statewide. So we're looking at coming from a statewide perspective. So utilizing that data is helpful. But we'll communicate out what we're doing as we get rolling here. And we're focused, focused on, as Sean mentioned, we've got, we requested a certain amount of dollars for this effort, and there's a lot of variables, and some a mile of roadway could be different from the next mile. So we're trying to understand the scope of how far we can do, but our objective is to get as much as done possible, and that's why we're focused on those high priority areas as determined by the FPC. Thanks.
Well, great. Thank you. Thanks again. Like I said, I think this is very much needed, especially with the pine beetle conversations that are going on. And so we're really grateful that you guys have pivoted to work on this. Thanks.
Eva.
Yeah, thank you for that. It was a really interesting presentation and a lot of good information. So my question is about the bare grounding. And I think you said that you use chemicals on that. Like, how do you mitigate it getting into the water system, or is it something that you're concerned with? Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Sure. So all of our chemical applications, we are the maintenance staff involved in that. They are required to be licensed by the Department of Agriculture. So we have the different layers of licensing. We have qualified supervisors, certified operators, and they are obligated by practice and by law to minimize the impacts to waterways. So there's some areas that we may not do that on because of the environmental considerations. So that's all taken into account in each area. But having those qualified supervisors who are licensed by the state, they are mandated by law and as individuals to make sure that they are taking into account following the manufacturer's instructions for application, which take into account environmental considerations. So we're very judicious about where we apply chemicals, and then when we do, we're also very judicious about how we apply those so that we are minimizing impacts to the world around the area that we're trying to treat.
Yeah, and just to add to what Jim brought up, and this isn't specific to the bare grounding, but environmental impact is also a factor in what we're doing, because if we have migratory birds in trees, we can't touch them. If it's going to, unsettle a endangered species, we got to be very thoughtful of that as well. So we're working with the regions at multiple levels once we kind of identify the areas, because some of the areas are CDOT right away, but there's easements by the U.S. Forestry Service. So we won't touch those areas because that would fall under their purview. But we're working with a lot of different stakeholders on the actual when we start actually getting the plan in place and beginning to execute.
Yeah. Thank you. Any other questions, comments on fire mitigation efforts? It's an important thing to help try to prevent those fires that could start from our right of ways, or give those fire breaks if something does start in an area. So it's very important. It helps protect wildlife and all those things too in the long run if we can prevent those fires from taking off. So, all right. Thank you for the presentation. Our next STAC meeting is scheduled for May 7th. That is to be in person at CDOT's headquarters. Virtual will be available, but we do encourage everybody to participate, as we will be having officer elections at this meeting in May. So be thinking about who you'd like to have be officers. Holly is going to be stepping away, so we definitely need a co-chair for sure. So we'll be having those. Any other items people have for next meeting that they'd like to hear or see anything for next meeting? Okay, seeing none. Any other questions, comments for the good of the group before we adjourn?
I would just have one item if we have more clarity on the budget, then a budget update. Okay.
Yeah, hopefully we will.
All right.
Have some idea.
I just wanted to add that Dr. Cog has a trip scheduled May 6th through May 8th out to the Seattle Cog area. And so I'll be out of town for that one. I'll miss. And I'm not sure if my alternate may also be on that trip. So if Dr. Cog isn't present in May, apologies. But it's not a reflection of our commitment.
Yeah. It's always hard to make every meeting all the time. So appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, and Chair Beatty, just appreciate Director Bear pointing that out, trying to make sure that, because I will also be in Seattle, trying to make sure that at least Dr. Cog's staff will be attending.
Okay. Yeah, we'll look for whoever's there to represent you. Appreciate that. Okay. Anything else? Anything, Darius, I missed?
I don't
All
think
right.
so. I don't think so, Chair Beatty. We're good.
Who is it we're going to miss? Is it Brian Pettit who's
Oh,
leaving?
yes. Brian Pettit this was his last meeting. So
Thank you, Brian.
all righty. We'll go ahead and adjourn. Give you back a little bit of your time for the day. So thank you. See you all next month.
Thank you.